Hello folks, Professor Fiore here. We have an interesting one in this video. We're going to talk about a derived filter for an active crossover. Now, if you're wondering, hey, what's a derived filter? Or for that matter, what's an active crossover? Well, buckle up. So first of all, an active crossover. What we're looking at is a crossover for a loudspeaker system, but not a passive system as would be found in a normal loudspeaker, in a normal home loudspeaker, where you would take the output of the power amplifier and with an RLC network, a purely passive network, you would split out, let's say, the low frequencies and the high frequencies, send the lows down to the bass driver, the woofer. You'd send the highs up to the high frequency driver, the tweeter. Everything works great, right? You don't want to put really low frequencies into a tweeter. You can destroy it. Similar issues with a woofer. You probably won't destroy it with high frequencies, but it's not going to reproduce the high frequencies very well. So we need to split up the spectrum. An active crossover is used in more demanding applications than your home. For example, in studio monitoring or in PA systems, large concert systems. What we do is we take the output of the signal and we run it through an active crossover. In other words, a low-level crossover utilizing transistors or op amps. And that splits the frequencies up. And then each of those sections, like the bass and the treble, go off to their own power amplifiers, which are then directly connected to the transducers. So if you split it in two, in other words, a bi-amplified system, the signal would go off into a bass amplifier, which is then connected to the woofer, and then it would also go off, and from the other filter, it would go off into a treble amplifier, a high-frequency amplifier, which drives the tweeter. All right. So you can do that, right? You can do the splitting with normal high-pass, low-pass filters. That's not really a problem. So what is the problem? Well, you're going to split the spectrum up, okay? And how do you know after you've split them that when you recombine them, in other words, acoustically, because the loudspeakers are playing, that what you get out is what you originally put in. In other words, that the amplitude across the entire spectrum is unity, 0 dB, and that there's no, funky things going on with the phase response of the system, okay? So, like I said, the classic example is a crossover network for loudspeaker systems. And by the way, this is a problem with passives as well as actives. It's not just an issue with one of them. There are other places where we might want to split up a spectrum and we would have this kind of issue. Okay. Well, how do you solve that problem? One possibility is through the use of a derived filter. So what's a derived filter, right? Basically, as its name implies, the response of the filter is determined by or derived from the response of some other filter. So for example, I could have a high-pass filter and I would derive the low-pass response from the high-pass response. That might sound a little weird, but trust me, it'll be very clear in a sec. If you do this correctly, you can guarantee that the amplitude across the spectrum will be even, in other words, 0 dB or unity, and there'll be no funky business going on with the phase, right? No phase discrepancies. Basic idea is you subtract this original filter, let's call it the reference filter, you subtract that output from the input signal. And you can do that with a simple differential amplifier. All right? So let's illustrate the problem, first of all, using standard filters. So here I've got a pair of high-pass, low-pass filters. These are tuned to 1 kilohertz just because it's a nice, easy number to deal with. And we're using a Butterworth alignment, very common alignment. 99% of the time you're going to use that. Now, this thing that I'm going to show you, the issue here, is true whether you're using these Butterworth alignments or you've had a different alignment, or maybe you're using a third order or a fourth order system. I'm just using the second orders here because, the schematic is easier and it's going to illustrate the problem as well as any other circuit. So, why not, right? Why clutter this thing up and make it look, crazier than it needs to? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little frequency response analysis, okay? So I'm going to run from 10 hertz to 100 kilohertz, and I'm going to look at both the amplitude and the phase on this. So tell you what, let's do this as a single graph, right? That might be nicer. All right, well, that looks pretty good. Okay, so on the top here, let's get our legend. On the top here, right, the green we can see is the high pass, and the sort of maroonish is the low pass. So that looks good. Looking at the amplitude part up here, right, because notice it says gain and phase down here. So looking at this, we know that this cross point right here should be at about 3 dB down, okay? And you would probably think, well, 3 dB down is half power. So if I have half the power from the low pass and half the power from the high pass, half and half, that's 1. Everything should be perfect. Well, you're forgetting about what's happening down here. Phase makes a huge difference. Now, depending on what the phase is, you might find that when you sum this green and this maroon, you get a null, you get a dip, or you even could get a little increase here, right? If these things are perfectly in phase, then you would get as a voltage, let's say you had an input voltage of 1 volt, right? At this critical frequency, you'd have 0.707 of a volt for each of these. Well, 0.707 and 0.707 is going to give you 1.414 volts, which is more than a volt, right? Power varies as the square of voltage. So you're going to find that you're going to have an increase, right? A bump where these two things combine. On the other hand, if they're exactly out of phase, these two signals could perfectly cancel and you'd get a null here. And in fact, that's what happens in this case, right? If we look at the green curve over here at 1 kilohertz at the critical frequency, that's sitting at about plus 90. And the maroon curve is sitting about minus 90. So the difference between those is 180 degrees. These two curves are out of phase. Oops. All right, so, you know, we can talk about that mathematically, but the other thing we could do is actually plot it. And you can see exactly what's going to happen here. So I'm going to use the post processor. And I'm just going to create a curve that says what's the LP and the HP, the high pass and the low pass, combined. All right. So let's just give this a decent name. How about if we just call it combo? You can't call it sum because Tina uses that word for something else. All right. So, you know, the phase over here looks a little funky just because of the size of it. But as a matter of fact, I'm going to come in here. You can see what it's doing. That's not the interesting one. The interesting one is this one right here. Notice this summation is producing a huge null, right? And given the resolution that we have, you know, this thing stops at probably somewhere around negative 50 dB, but it probably even goes deeper. So clearly this is a problem. This is not going to work, okay? And if you're a smart person, right, you might be thinking, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just flip the phase, right? Because if these two things are exactly out of phase, why don't I just invert this? And I can do that very easily with the loudspeaker just by swapping the positive and negative leads on the loudspeaker, right? Well, you don't get a dip. Instead, you get a hump. What ends up happening is the very first thing I said, the signals are now perfectly in phase, and you wind up with like a 3 decibel boost at the critical frequency. So that's not really going to solve the problem. Okay, so let's move on. Let's take a look at our derived filter. Okay, first thing I want to point out is this right here. I'm using something a little bit more realistic. Now I've got a third order filter right here. Okay, so this is a third order Butterworth filter, right? Design of this you can find in the textbook, right? And if you're not familiar, if you're only watching the videos, you can download my textbooks for free, right? Just follow the links that are in the video description. In any case, you'll find this in chapter 11. This is a standard third order filter, right? This is a Butterworth alignment. It's tuned to 1 kilohertz. So, you know, just coming from input, you go right to the output over here. There's going to be nothing special about this. It's going to be something you've seen in the book, right? It's a high-pass filter. So this is going off to the tweeter amplifier, right? Third order Butterworth, meaning it's an 18 dB per octave roll-off, all right? Now, what we do is, from the output of this, we derive the low pass. Now, think about this for a sec. This signal out here, this is the input signal. That has everything. And what I want to do is subtract from it all the high-frequency stuff, which just leaves me with the low-frequency stuff. So to do that, we just use a differential amplifier, a little op-amp differencing amplifier, right? This thing is set up for a gain of 1. So what we end up doing, notice the high pass is coming into the minus input, and the input signal is coming into the non-inverting input. So this is going to give me a low pass response. And by definition, because I've simply subtracted this piece from the total, what's left is exactly what you need to add to the high pass to get the original, right? Okay, so let's do the same deal. All right, let's come in here and we'll do a little AC analysis, plot this little beastie up, see what we get. Boink. Okay. Well, the first thing you probably notice is that the low pass response here is asymmetrical compared to the high pass. Right? So this is our nice 18 dB per octave roll-off, okay, or 60 dB per decade if you prefer that. Okay. So here's our critical frequency. This is at 1 kilohertz, right? There's our 1K. 1 octave down is 100 hertz, and you can see there we are at minus 60. So this is third order. This is the thing that we designed. This is a basic Salonen key, Butterworth alignment, third order filter, all right? And you might have expected that the derived filter output would also have been third order, but it's not. As a matter of fact, this thing is much closer to like first order, like 6 dB per octave. And it has a little bit of a hump over here. As a matter of fact, this hump, if we zoom in on it here a little bit, there we go. Come over here. That hump is coming in at right around 4 dB. Okay. Now this is going to take a little bit of a requirement on the part of the woofer, because this is such a shallow roll-off. You do need a woofer that has pretty good high-frequency performance, relatively speaking. All right, in order for this thing to work properly. You know, this might work well for like a subwoofer kind of thing. You're doing a subwoofer cross, because you might expect that to go, you know, another decade up or so. All right, but here's the really interesting bit. I'm going to come back in and do the same thing as far as the summation on these. All right, so let's verify. I'm just going to add high pass and low pass. Okay, and let's just call this combo 2. Now look at that. Okay, these colors have mimicked. Let's change the colors because it's the same as the other one there. I'll have to turn that to blue. I'll do the same thing over here. Just by highlighting it, you could see what's going on. But I'll do it anyway. Well, in both cases, you can see, look at this amplitude response, 0, straight across, 0 dB, in other words, unity. And you look at the phase response, 0. It's perfect. It's exactly what you want. All right. So is this the be-all, end-all? Is this what you want to do? Well, again, this works really well for an active system. For a passive system, you know, doing the subtraction over here is a little bit tricky. And you do have the issue with the woofer having to have an extended high-frequency response. But it is an interesting sort of approach to this. And I'll tell you this is not like some brand new thing that just popped out. This is actually the very first place I ever saw this was in a National Semiconductor Audio Handbook back in the 70s. You know, people were monkeying with this kind of stuff. So, you know, it didn't come out of my brain, right? I'm just sort of informing you of some cool stuff that, you know, I've never really seen this in any other books, in any textbooks or anything like that. So it's kind of an interesting idea, right? As usual, if you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. And until then, I'll see you later.